In this chapter, we are going to discuss loops, or iterators in other words. At php.net, let's quickly type in while, which is the first loop type that we're going to be discussing. And while simply loops are the simplest types of a loop in PHP. They behave like just like the C counterparts, and C being another programming language. The basic form of a while statement is we have a while, then expression within the brackets, and a statement which is executed only when the while condition, the expression within the brackets, returns true. And then we've got some more information. The meaning of a while statement is simple. It tells PHP to execute the nested statements repeatedly as long as while expression evaluates to true. The value of the expression is checked each time at the beginning of the loop. So even if the value changes during the execution of the nested statement, say we change the value of the item which has been within the expression inside of this statement, execution will not stop until the end of the iteration. Each time PHP runs the statement in the loop is one iteration. So every time we loop through one of the items is one iteration basically. Sometimes if the while expression evaluates to false from the very beginning, the nested statements won't even be run once. Like with the if statement, you can group multiple statements within the same while loop by surrounding a group of statements by curly braces, or by using the alternative syntax, which we've got here with a while, and then the expression colon statement, and then we have end while with the semicolon at the end. And then we have a few examples here. Let's quickly go to our editor and try a few of our own. We are going to start with the variable I, and we set it to 1. And now what we are going to do is use this while statement, and in between the brackets we say as long as I is less than 10, then we're going to put the set of curly brackets and our statements. What we want to do is simply echo this I in a browser, and what we are going to also do is increment it once it's been echoed in the browser, increment it by 1. So plus plus, as you may remember, this is the post incremental expression here. Otherwise, if we put two pluses before the variable, then it would first increment it, and then it would return it basically to this echo statement. So in this case, every time it's going to start with 1, because the first iteration will start with 1. So it's going to echo 1, then increment it by 1, which is going to make it 2. 2 is still less than 10, so it's going to echo 2. After 2, it's going to increment it to 3. 3 is still less than 10, so the statement will still execute until we reach number 10. Once it reaches the 10, once the I is going to be to return 10, then obviously 10 is not less than 10, in which case basically the whole while loop will end, and the statement move to the next line in PHP. So if we have any other statements here, then after all this, obviously we would have these statements executed. So let's quickly check this in a browser, but rather than just having this like this, let's also echo new line with BR. So each of these items is echoed on the new line. So if we now save it and preview it in a browser, php-dev, there we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As I told you earlier, obviously if it's 10, 10 is not less than 10, so the while statement has basically ended. And if I just echo something, end of a while loop, there we go, save it, and there we go. Obviously at the end of this statement, once while loop finished, then PHP went to the next line and obviously executed whatever was after this while loop. So if we go back to the editor, now let's remove what we've got here, and what I'm going to do this time is just show you the other alternative syntax basically, so you can use the colon, and at the end of this while loop basically, and while and semicolon, which is giving us exactly the same result. It's just basically the alternative syntax that we can use when we are dealing with while loops. All loops that we are going to be discussing in this chapters are particularly useful when we are dealing with the arrays. Let's quickly remove what we've got here in our index.php file, and I'm going to create a simple array with 3 items. So array, simple variable array, and we are associating the array with it. And the first item will be 1, second one will be 2, and the last third item will be 3. Now, this array uses default indexing because we didn't strictly specify what indexes we want to associate with these values. So obviously for the first one, it's going to be 0, for the second one, it's going to be 1, and for the third one, it's going to be 2. Before we write our while statement, let's quickly have a look at the PHP documentation for another function, which we're going to be using inside of our expression for this while statement, which is called each. So inside of the search field, let's type each, and let's open page for this each statement. And there we go. It returns the current key and value pair from an array and advances the array cursor. And then description tells us that it returns an array. It takes an array as a reference. You can see this end symbol here. And then we have after each has executed, the array cursor will be left on the next element of the array or past the last element if it hits the end of the array. You have to use reset if you want to traverse the array again using each, and we are going to discuss this array cursor and all this traversing, resetting in this video as well. Let's quickly scroll down. It takes a parameter an array and then return values. Returns the current key and value pair from the array. This pair is returned in a 4-element array with the key 0, 1, key and value. Elements 0 and key contain the key name of the array element, and 1 and value contain the data. If the internal pointer for the array points past the end of the array contents, each returns false, which means that our expression will simply return false. In other words, the while statement will end and the PHP parser will move to the next line in the file it's executing. So let's quickly go back to our editor, and what we are going to do now is write this while statement. So while, and what I'm going to do is create the variable item, and I associate this array, the item from this generated by this each statement. So each, and I'm passing the array through as an argument, set of curly brackets. So what happens now? Each will return, with each iteration, it's going to return one of the items from this array. So the first time this statement will execute, we are going to get 1 with the index 0. So what we are going to do inside of this while statement, what I'm going to do is simply echo item 0. And on the next line, let's simply echo, let's say just this angle bracket. And then we're going to echo item 1, which will give us the value. So 0 basically gives us the key, and 1 will gives us the value. And then after this, I'm going to echo br so that we've got it all on new line. So if we now go back to the browser, refresh the page, and there we go. 0 index gives us 1, first index is giving us 2, and third index is giving us 3. Now, this internal array pointer, what does this actually mean? Every time we loop, whether it's while or any other loop method, the array pointer moves to the next item, and the array pointer, what it is, it basically tells the array from the inside which item is it looking currently at. So let's say we start with the array, fresh array, the internal pointer points to the first item. Once we iterate it through the first item, through the loop for the first time, and then we try to iterate for the second time, we already looking at the second item. So the pointer goes to the second item. Once we've executed statement for the second item, the internal pointer is pointing to the third item. Then it loops through it, and obviously after this, the internal pointer goes to the end of the array. The next line does not exist, so it will return false, in which case this while statement will end. So that's how this internal pointer works. And then, as it did say in this documentation, when we are actually looping using while, at the end of the statement, the internal pointer stays at the end, basically pointing to non-existing item, which means if we try and do the while statement again, and I'm going to do it right here, right after, then let's see what we're going to get. Refresh the page, nothing. We only see the the items being returned with the first while loop, but the second while loop doesn't return anything because it returns right at the beginning. The first time it tries, it returns false because the internal pointer is already at the end of the array. And I'm just to prove it, obviously, I'm going to echo here something, end of the first while statement. And let's just do spaces. Save the page. As you can see, after this statement, the second while doesn't return anything. But if we want to run it again, what we need to do is use this reset function and then pass our array as an argument. And now what this reset one does, let's quickly check the documentation before we can refresh the page, and now you can see it runs again. Obviously we didn't put the new line, so echo, let's do br here as well, so that the first item is actually on its own line as well. There we go. So after we reset it, it ran again through the array because our internal pointer moved back to the first item by using this reset function. Let's quickly have a look at the documentation as well. So in a search, let's type reset. There we go. And what it does, it sets the internal pointer of an array to its first elements. That's exactly what it does. It rewinds array's internal pointer to their first element and returns the value of the first array item. So if you wanted to associate the variable with this reset function, it would return the first item in this array. Let's quickly try this again as well. So reset, I'm going to put first equals, and now I'm just going to print this first item. And let's exit statement here. So this second while statement is not executing at all. If we quickly go back to the browser, refresh the page, and there we go, the first item has been returned. So that's basically what the reset statement does. So we obviously don't need this, we only want that. Again, as you saw, it returns items, the key and value to the statement as 0 and 1, or key and value. And just to prove it as well, let's use, rather than 0, we are going to use the key index, and rather than 1, we are going to use value, and we are going to get exactly the same result, as you can see. So you can use either 0, 1, or key and value as the keys for this item that is actually being passed to this while statement here, this item. So on this item, we have key and value, where key obviously represents the key of the given item in the array through which we are currently iterating, and the value obviously returns the associated value. You can do it either this way or simply by using 0 and 1. What we could also do, if you're not happy using these indexes, I'm just going to remove this part of the code here. Rather than key and value, what we could also do is use the list language construct, which we've discussed earlier. So list, and then simply say key and value, and we can remove this item from here. So basically this each function will return key and value as separate items to this list language construct. And now what we can simply do is echo the variable key, which represents the key, and variable value, which will represent the value of the given item that we are currently iterating through. So if we just go back to the browser, you can see it works exactly the same way. So you can do it either way, whichever one you feel more comfortable with.